Good afternoon, everybody. This is Professor Katia Sim, and welcome to our second webinar in the Education Conversation series. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you who have really religiously found the time to come and spend the next few hours with us, deliberating over the theme COVID-19 and the catalyzing of a 4IR driven culture of learning. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us. And as the news goes, it seems like we are increasing in numbers and a possible fourth wave, as they say, being predicted for December. So we're not out of the woods yet. And so it becomes very interesting for us to start to center some of our discussions around education, culture of learning, and what the COVID-19 and really other disruptions have done in order to allow us to rethink the world in which we live in today. It also gives me a great pleasure to welcome Ms. Mandisa Tselane, who is from Kagiso Trust, and she will be doing our welcome this afternoon. Welcome, Mandisa, and please, over to you. Mandisa, please unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Prof. And sorry about this. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Kagiso Trust and our partners, University of Johannesburg, the Faculty of Education, we welcome you and thank you, all of you who have chosen to be here this afternoon. I would like to extend a special welcome to our panelists, Ms. Lindiwe Matlali, Mr. Andres Makhoba, and Ms. Mokateko Sitoli. Our Kagiso Trust executive management and colleagues who are here, our board of trustees who are here today. I can see our chairperson of the board, Ms. Mankoni Nzaba, is here. I can also see Mr. Andrew Maralak is here, and thank you for joining. And thank you, Prof, as our program director. And most of all, though, to those of you who are so passionately committed to making a difference and who have given your valuable time to grace us with your presence this afternoon as we explore the effects of the COVID-19 in speeding us into the digital revolution. Maybe it's something that we can appreciate with this crisis from an education perspective. I don't need colleagues to tell you and our audience who are here today how important is the work that will be presented here today. As we were exploring the topic for today and pondering on how COVID-19 is changing the landscape of education in South Africa and truly advancing us to 4IR with speed, we looked at the practical solutions that can be implemented and be adapted with ease. Our panel of experts today will demonstrate the tools that we hope can be easily adapted and adopted even in remote and rural areas, as they share with us some of the technologies like the robotics and coding using knitting, and we hope there will be more bias towards action as per our topic of today, which is COVID-19 is catalyzing a 4IR-driven culture of learning. At Kagiso Trust, we do a lot of work in the rural areas and in marginalized communities where technology and connectivity can be a challenge. And we understand how these disruptions can affect and make learning difficult to both the learner and the educator, and thus the importance of the practical solutions that will be presented here today. So we take this challenge and the crisis of COVID disruptions to learning very seriously. And we are committed to supporting the rural schools as we have even improved our education model to include blended learning and ICT integration in rural school. in rural schools. While we acknowledge that there's enormous amount of work that's been done to address these challenges by the Department of Education, the academia, the private sector, and the civil society organizations, we all know, though, that there is still more that needs to be done. And this platform of education conversations is created as a forum to discuss how we can work together to address these challenges. Education Conversations is a platform for diverse voices and perspectives and robust engagements. And we hope that innovative ideas will emerge today and the body of knowledge will be created. So, Prof, as we begin these conversations this afternoon, I would encourage our audience here today that we will look at opportunities to collaborate. Each of us has a different role and a different contribution to make. So let's take this opportunity to look for those opportunities to collaborate. May we have a joyful afternoon, and make sure that we please advance these discussions beyond the education conversations. Please engage with us on Facebook. We are live on Facebook. We will be tweeting live using the hashtag education conversations. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you for bringing us into conversation and into the topic. And of course, there is a lot happening around the COVID-19 discussions at the moment, in particular, the rate of infections amongst children, which is happening, in other parts of the world more seriously, but something for us to contemplate on, over the next little while. So to a large extent, I think this topic of COVID-19, as you so rightly said, Mandisa, is one that is going to remain with us for a while longer. And obviously, as we start to think about what the implications are for education, it also brings us into very close quarters with the fourth industrial revolution and what that means for the world to a very large extent. Now, given where South Africa is, it is really wonderful that we were able to attract into conversation today a school principal in Limpopo in the form of Mr. Andries Makgoba, someone who is very experienced with about 27 years of experience, in the field. And he has started his journey as a teacher and has continued on to take over the leadership of Lekkerbreek Primary School. And at the moment, one of the things that Andries Makgoba, as well as his colleagues, particularly in rural and in South African low quintile schools, people are grappling with, or leaders are grappling really into how do we take our under-resourced schools into the digital area. It's all very well to have a small subset of our population equipped with digitally and equipped with access to technology and to the internet, so that teaching and learning and ongoing education can go on for some of our children. But what then happens in communities where some of this infrastructure is not in place, the training of teachers has not already rolled out and happened. And so I really look forward to Andries's conversation around how he has been fully active in terms of equipping his school digitally, and how that has come about for them down there. It's very interesting to see on the ground, how they are dealing with this issue at hand. So Andries, just to welcome you into our conversation this afternoon, and to thank you also for your valuable time, given that it's a very busy times at school at the moment. What I would like to ask the audience to do in the meanwhile, while Andries is preparing to have the conversation with us, is to start reacting to the poll that we've just put into place that reads, "Are South African rural and township schools ready for the fourth industrial revolution?" So it would be interesting to see what your take on it is. And then as we converse with Andries, we'll be able to come back to the poll and react to some of that. So Andres, over to you. Andres, if you want to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can hear your beautiful kids in the background. So I'm sure you're at school at the moment.
Yeah, I'm at school, really. So, but am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Andres. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, once more. Thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation. My name is Matukela Andres Makova, the principal of Lagerberg Primary School in Nestrum Circuit, which is in the Waterberg district. The school is built in a semi-rural area of Parameng in Limpopo province. Lagerberg Primary School has 22 classrooms, which are currently occupied by 1,280 learners. It has 32 permanent educators and 5 permanent support staff members. My presentation today provides an overview of the developments of my school's digital journey. In my presentation, I will cover the following aspects: a brief introduction, the way to bridge the digital divide, the role of the members of the school management team, the role of the members of the school governing body, parental involvement, and then a short conclusion. Under introduction, globally, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted normal teaching and learning activities with the hard lockdown, forcing remote learning. When schools resumed operations later in 2020, we had to resort to rotational timetables where half the number of the learners were allowed to attend school. The situation brought to the fore that those schools which were digitally equipped and where learners and teachers had access could continue with teaching and learning, but schools like mine, which serves poorer communities, were clearly at a disadvantage. Amongst the school leadership team and the teachers, we had WhatsApp and later Zoom as our major platforms for communication. However, reaching parents and learners remained a problem. The pandemic provided two first opportunities. One, the exposure of the fact that the digital divide disadvantaged many of the low quintile schools like mine. It was clear that this needed to change. And two, each school have to strategize with stakeholders on how to improve their digital footprint. In the case of my school, we started this conversation within the SMT early, as it was clear that the pandemic caught us unaware. Creating a system for communication was a primary need. And this pointed out some of the limitations among staff in terms of technology. So to consider remote learning as a possible alternative at an uncertain time was a key priority should there be further prolonged lockdowns. In this regard, school leadership team quickly realized that collaborative decision-making will be a key process in the successful planning and implementation of the digitization plan for our schools. Under the role of members of the school management team, I started the process by creating a space for conversation amongst the school leadership team. We had a facilitated process whereby departmental heads audited the skills level and the device tools accessible to teachers in their care. They also surveyed where the teachers were at and what they needed in terms of technological development. I asked departmental heads to dream big. I said to them, let's start with where we are and where we would like to be. Each departmental head devised a separate plan for his or her teaching team. based on the surveys conducted. This provided a personalized plan for each department, and the resources could be prioritized. In the process of ascertaining skills level, departmental heads also identified ICT champions in their teams. These were young members of staff who seemed to be digitally ahead and requested that they lead the ICT project in their teams. These champions devised workshops and one-on-one sessions to equip their colleagues. This process worked well because teachers had colleagues in their midst whom they could draw on for support and help. When young teachers had to assist older colleagues, patience, sensitivity, and repeated sessions were needed. Older teachers realized that they could learn from their younger colleagues and draw on their expertise until they felt confident. The DBE ICT training was scaffolded within in-house training to meet individual teacher needs. Educators were encouraged to use the school's digital devices to prepare teaching and learning activities together. Later, educators were sharing ideas and trying the new technological tools to use in their classrooms. This created a community of practice, one that would grow and in many ways bring the teachers together towards a common purpose. It is interesting to know that even those teachers who resisted before wanted to learn. This approach worked for our school. Under the role of the members of the school governing body, that is the other stakeholder that was consulted accordingly, and has played a pivotal role in digitizing our school. And its role has been where parent representatives saw the immediate need to include learners into a program that would help them become familiar with technology. Young learners are knowledgeable and they enjoy learning through technology, but access is limited in schools, and especially like us, and for some non-existent, even at home. I mean, in the far as the technological tools are concerned. With the help of the school governing body, we have started the process of finding ways to supply additional resources. What we would like to see is one laptop for one teacher and one iPad for one learner. This will take time, as to acquire equipment and maintaining the equipment is not a simple task. We also want to ensure that our teachers and learners know how to use the equipment in ways that enable communication for remote learning, but also serve as a platform where teachers can extend their curriculum to include technology. This means that both equipment and training are very important. A parent volunteered technological skills and has agreed to work with learners in order to provide basic training. A timetable was created that ensured that all learners and their teachers get the opportunity to learn some basic computer skills, for instance. This computer lab timetable has been strongly supported by the school governing body, and progress is being made with learners feeling comfortable with the presence of computers at their level. The school governing body has agreed to buy a generator as a way to ensure that uninterrupted listed supply to assist the digital project of the school is not disturbing the whole process. The support of members of the school governing body is paramount because one has to strategize with the team in order to ensure that what is taught at school is carried over into homes. Under conclusion, what have been described as one of the small steps that we as a school have taken to develop our digital footprint has yielded this result that we're indicating thus far. In order for us to embrace a fourth industrial revolution world, even the poorest schools are going to have to devise plans to progress forward with what they have at their disposal. It means that they will have to make their own pathways towards accessing resources and skills development. We chose not to wait for the department or for others, but to develop through our own agency a way forward. It is a small start, but the fruits are already emerging. Schools in rural areas and township schools can be equipped to take on the fourth industrial revolution challenge. And I pause. Thank you for that. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Andres, for that amazing conversation around, you know, how you are working. And I like the comment that you made that we're not waiting for anybody. We are working from what we have and what we know. And I think that that's the platform that everybody needs to sort of pay attention to. If we wait for everything to happen in a way that all schools are equipped and everybody has all of the bells and whistles of technology, you know, we're going to wait forever. But in just sharing some of these pictures that you have put onto your PowerPoint, I think it says quite a bit around some of the devices that we are already seeing here. I don't know if you just want to maybe speak to these pictures, you know, so that we can just share to our audience the kind of start with what we have and from where we are. Andres, do you want to maybe share some of these pictures with our audience?
Okay, actually, those pictures are actually a reflection of what the school is already doing, where the young teachers are teaching the older ones, which has usually tend to be BBTs. But we appreciate the way they are cooperating, and up so far is one of the strategies which we have used as a school to ensure that we mobilize support. We agreed that if we can start with educators, empower them accordingly, they will then be able to take this process of empowering learners forward into their various classrooms, where they can also be integrating the whole curriculum through technology. And while that volunteered computer teacher there as a parent is doing their best to empower these learners, they will then come as a reinforcement in that regard. So those pictures are a reflection of what we are already doing to make sure that teachers are already prepared accordingly.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andres. I see there's a very active chat at the moment with lots of people agreeing with you and also showing that smaller acts. So Kiana says, for example, that smaller activities, you know, which allow schools to reach their targets, enable people to actually, you know, access, you know, different learning resources and equipment. And, you know, where teachers are being trained in some of the basic computer skills. And I suppose everybody is in agreement that it begins with teachers. And so introducing computer literacy at school, which use both online and offline programs, you know, are ones that are being strongly accounted for. Nomusa speaks of infrastructure and other things being available, you know, for teaching and learning. But I think it begins with the teachers and, you know, getting them excited and comfortable with technology, you know, so as they take on those roles, it sort of spreads over. I don't think one would have to convince the learners necessarily, but our teachers, you know, as Derek is saying, the ones born before technology, you know, are the ones to be convinced. And I think that COVID has probably been one of the catalysts that has started this conversation. Mitesh, I don't know if you want to just maybe show us our poll just to see where people are at around, you know, whether our rural schools are actually, you know, equipped for the fourth industrial revolution. I don't know what our poll is saying at the moment.
So at the moment, the poll is sitting at 15% for yes and 85% at no.
Okay, not something that we did not expect when we put up that poll together, everybody. And I think that Andres' presentation actually makes the point that readiness for the fourth industrial revolution is not necessarily going to come from outside. It's going to come from the will of principals and teaching staff and people, you know, who are based at schools, who start taking the project into their own hands and strategically working with what they have and from where they are. So well done, Andres. And I think there's been a lot of praise in the chat. If you have a few minutes, it's worthwhile for you to go in and have a look at the chat, which gives you some idea as to what people are talking about in terms of your presentation. And we'll probably pick up some of the threads a little bit later. So here we go. Here's our poll. And again, not unduly unexpected. We are all quite aware that many of our schools fall within the low quintile band, and things are a whole lot more difficult for them for a number of different reasons. But, it begins with one principal, one teacher, one classroom, and we've got to have that kind of hope alive. So thank you so much, people, for participating in our poll. Our next speaker is Ms. Mukateko Sitole, and Mukateko is actually very close to my heart. She is not only the Senior Education Specialist for Natural Sciences and Technology at the Limpopo Department of Education. So Andres and Mukateko come from the same neck of the woods, but she's also a member of the National Training Team for Coding and Robotics. But above all, Mukateko is actually a PhD student of mine, so soon to be, or eventually to be, Dr. Mukateko Sitole, who will present to us the idea of, or the plans of what DBE is planning in terms of rolling out coding and robotics, since she's already, involved as a member of that team. So Katie, a very warm welcome to you. And we look forward to the conversation that you'll have with us. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Mukateko Sitole, a teacher, developer in coding and robotics for the DBE in Limpopo province. It gives me great pleasure to share how we are rolling out a curriculum that will prepare schools for a constantly changing world. The COVID-19 brought with it a forced opportunity. It disrupted teaching and learning globally, moving attention towards digital access. In South Africa, there exists a digital divide, and the closure of schools meant that the vast majority of learners were left behind. Principals, teachers, learners, parents, and the Department of Basic Education were all driven towards saving the school year. However, it became quickly evident that there will be a new normal. Nothing will remain the same, and the schools had to adapt to support remote learning, rotational timetables, and accommodate the digital divide. Very quickly, everyone was scrambling to enter the technology-driven learning race with an urgent imperative to equip schools with digital devices and prepare teachers for the use of technology in their classrooms. The drive was to ensure teaching and learning continue no matter the external environment, and to add imperatives like coding and robotics to the school curriculum. In March 2020, South African teachers woke up to the 4IR reality. While it is a progressive gesture that all South Africa's children should be equipped through their education to face 21st century 4IR world, the digital preparedness of schools to take on this task needs to be considered. In a policy brief published in 2021, where the ICT readiness tool was piloted in over 5,000 schools, it was found that even though schools are aware of the need for ICT use and integration into the curriculum, they have yet to reach a stage where ICT is entrenched in the leadership and vision of their schools. For example, some schools still have a no cell phone policy because of the school leadership and the and the teachers are not aware of how cell phone can be helpful to teaching and learning. Digital access is more readily available to educators and administrators, but access for learners still lags in most schools. Both the organizational and infrastructure enable us to foster an enabling environment for ensuring ICT and infrastructure, ICT readiness of a school generally lag in majority of our provinces. More needs to be done to encourage educators to integrate the use of ICT in the curriculum. For example, teachers to record video lessons, use WhatsApp, send video lessons on YouTube, use virtual platforms like Zoom, Microsoft, and Google Meet. Dedicated and adequately trained ICT educators should be identified and supported to strengthen the ICT readiness of a specific school, and as such, embed digital technology in the educator sector of South Africa. What does this mean? This meant that a lot of resources and infrastructure and teacher development will be needed to create a 4IR driven culture of learning. The result that we are seeing there, it's supporting the pilot study on digital readiness, which shows that the vast majority of South African schools are at level 3. This means that schools will have to be evaluated and teachers will need support to develop digitally ready schools. In this regard, the addition of robotics and coding could not wait until all schools were adequately equipped and all teachers trained. We will be building the road as we're traveling on it. Many studies have already shown that it is not enough to provide schools with digital access, but teacher training and support will be a vital component for the success of such programs. In 2021, the Department of Basic Education began the journey of rolling out teacher professional development by equipping grade R to 3 and grade 7 teachers with coding and robotics, so that the designed curriculum could be implemented and to create ICT champions who will be prepared to facilitate a digital culture of learning at their schools. The coding and robotics subjects are aimed at guiding and preparing learners to solve problems, think critically, work collaboratively and creatively, and function in a digital and information-driven world. And through this learning, learners will be able to apply digital and ICT skills and to transfer these skills to solve everyday problems and its possibilities. But before the learners, what about teacher preparation? This is where my story begins. To start the journey of teacher development, we had to check where teachers were and what resources they had access to. We checked the devices from all the schools, devices like laptops, tablets, and data projectors. From there, we checked the teachers at a school to determine the computer skills that they are having, so that we can be able to provide the necessary training, the necessary ICT skills. In 2020, I was selected to be part of the national training team of teacher developers for coding and robotics in Limpopo province.
I think we have lost Kathy's audio there. While we wait, for Kathy to get back online, I must say that there's an amazingly robust, conversation, that's happening. on the chat space. So please, people, please have a look at the chat space. And also then just to remind people that the hashtag is education conversations for the Twitter feed. And what is of particular interest to me, and what Katie has also mentioned, is that everybody is in agreement that we can't wait until schools become fully equipped in order to be able to start the project of propelling them into the 4IR world that is going to demand very many skills from our learners, especially as they enter a world where we are uncertain in terms of what kind of work might be out there for them, and also what kind of skills would they require for their future. So it's a real pity that Katie, has been dropped. So we will wait until she can get back on. But I think in the meanwhile, let us engage with some of the chat conversations that have actually been happening. I think we have 2 questions that have come up. So I think it was Nadine who asked the question, Andres, for you. What about the internet access at your school? What about connectivity and data? Do you have any challenges in that regard, or how have you overcome such challenges with internet connectivity and data? Please unmute. Please unmute your.
Okay, am I louder now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. What we have done to make sure that this process is not necessarily disturbed was just to install a Wi-Fi, which is very functional. It's just problematic when electricity goes off. But to mitigate those other aspects, we also bought routers. We've got 15 routers with 15 SIM cards with one of the dynamic service providers in our country, where teachers are getting at least 10,000 megabytes gigs per month. So educators who are having challenges of connectivity at school, they're able to go.
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm back. I'm very sorry. That is why I'm probably connectivity problems. I'm very sorry.
No problem, Katie. Just give Andres a minute to complete his answer to one of the questions, and then we'll get you. We understand completely, so please don't even stress about it. Go ahead, Andres. You were saying that routers were provided. Were these routers secured by yourself, or did somebody go out and actively source, these resources from your community?
Sorry, ma'am. What we wanted to indicate was that the school has a functional Wi-Fi. So educators who have activities to do during the school working hours, or even those who can go extra mile, they're able to use the Wi-Fi at school. But for those who have challenges of connectivity at school because of some commitments at home, at least we provided as a school, we had to go out to look for, we had a comparative analysis of what the service providers are having there in the market. And we bought 15 routers and 15 SIM cards from one of the suitable service providers. And they, at least in a router, is a SIM card with 10 gigs in a month. So that was a strategy to mitigate in terms of data shortages. And from where I'm sitting, we have done our best so that teachers who are able to remain even after working hours, they're using the school's Wi-Fi. And those who have to go for other family commitments, they're able to, while they're at home, they're still able to log in through the router facilities provided with the data. So that is what we have done up so far. It's just that in our plan, it's also stated that in order to mitigate electrical outages, we also have a program of buying a very suitable generator so that going forward, this process of digitalization in terms of this project is not unnecessarily disturbed. That is what I can say up so far.
What you're saying, Andres, is that you have redirected strategically the finances of the school to support the project of digitally equipping the school. So in other words, in many ways, you have forged ahead together with your stakeholders, the SGB, the SMT, and so forth, in order to strategize what would be the most important use of school resources. And so in that way, you have enabled, digital access in those ways. So I hope, Nadira, that does answer your question, that you had online, which we all agree is a problem in rural areas. And of course, Kathy's current situation of just being kicked out of our conference call is also evidence to that. So Kathy, please go ahead. I'm sorry that you were interrupted. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think I was still talking about the training of the grade R to 3 teachers and the grade 7 teachers in June.
Mm-hmm.
And we divided the teachers into 3 groups of 90, again into 2 groups of 45. We're using 2 venues when we're training these teachers. The training was face-to-face. After checking from our resource audit, we realized that it will not be possible for us to do virtual, but we have to meet with our teachers face-to-face. We did that from June to, we completed it a few days ago in August the 5th. Then we began by preparing the teachers for coding and robotics curriculum using the Moodle platform. The teachers were using their own laptops from their schools, as the principals indicated that they will provide. And then when they were using the Moodle platform, there were a lot of activities and quizzes that they were doing. But on the first day, they have to start with the pre-test and then the activities for 4 days and the quizzes. And the quizzes were allowing them to attempt several times until they master what they were doing. And then they completed a post-test. Teachers are certified if they achieve level 7 competence. The picture that we are seeing there, this is what we are trying to do, or what we are doing on the ground. Implementation started in July when we reopened. In the pictures, you can see, I'm not sure if it's that clear, but we are having schools there. There is a picture from Wanamahu Primary School where the teacher is teaching Scratch in grade 7, the teacher at the picture at the center there. We have got another picture there where the learners are at the computer lab. They are busy learning coding at Kwadu Primary School. The other picture, the red and white one, those are the teachers. That is the center where we allow teachers to come anytime for assistance, and we use the very same center for training in the district. The certified teachers are visited in their classrooms to support their teaching of coding and robotics. We are visiting the teachers in their different schools. We do troubleshooting with them where problems arise, and with pedagogy appropriate for their context. What is going to happen is for grade 4, 5, 6, and grade 8, the training will start in October in preparation for 2022. The training is going to happen in October for those grades because this year we are implementing only in grade R to 3 and in grade 7. So in preparation for next year, the training will be happening in October 2021. The implementation plan in 2021, we have got R to 3 and grade 7. In 2022, we have got grade 4 to 6 and grade 8. In 2023, we are going to have grade 9. In 2024, we will have grade R to grade 9 learners doing coding and robotics as a subject. The program for the training of the other schools that are not piloting is also in place. It's just that we are starting with the pilot schools. The Department of Basic Education is also strengthening the issue of school connectivity program, strengthening of inclusive education, improvement of learning outcomes for children with special needs. From the 110 schools that we are piloting this year in the province, we have the special schools. So we are not leaving the special schools outside. And the department is also intending to provide more resources to the schools. Like the MST grant now is channeled to providing the devices that the necessary devices and resources that are needed in schools. And then the other training that it's still coming is the UNISA training. The teachers who were trained grade R to 3 and grade 7 are still going to be trained by UNISA for 160 hours for coding and robotics content. Another training that we are going to have in 2 weeks is by Africa Teen Jigs from the 30 of August to 3 September for the sampled schools. Another thing that is assisting us or will continue assisting us is partnering with or in collaborating with the private and the public frameworks like Bella Metrics, Belela e-learning. They are assisting in training teachers in integrating ICT skills in the curriculum. What we are expecting to have at the end is that everyone should be helping the Department of Basic Education in developing the teachers to integrate ICT in their teaching, which means together we can do better. In the end, coding and robotics aim at equipping learners to contribute in a meaningful and successful way to a rapidly changing and transforming 4IR world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandis Mukateko, for actually providing us with some of what's actually happening on the ground in terms of coding and robotics and the various plans that are happening right now. I think it was opportune for you to also mention Africa Teen Geeks. And of course, we all know that Lindiwe Matlali, who is also a speaker online, is the CEO, and she'll probably be beaming with pride knowing that she's partnering the DBE with some of the wonderful work that needs to happen, around this. So Kathy, I think that again, another indication that we are moving towards a curriculum that is going to be very, very responsive and relevant for what is required in the fourth industrial revolution. And to say that in the province of Limpopo, for example, where you're speaking from, that all of this is already underway is already an amazingly wonderful sign. Now, of course, a lot of our audience would want to sort of look at Andres and look at some of the work that you're doing, Kathy, and say, wow, this is amazing. And it's great for those pilot schools and for schools who have got the kind of leadership that is propelling schools into this future. But then we have a large number of schools who fall into the category of dire need for a number of different reasons. So the one thought at the back of everybody's mind is that it's all very well to talk about, robotics and coding and all kinds of other things. But on the chat, as you will see, there's a lot happening there around, the what about schools that are being left behind or where schools don't have a lot of the resources. So what we've done is we've asked for a exercise a Mentimeter exercise that just gets audience feedback in terms of, if we do not have schools with all of the necessary equipment and technology access and infrastructure, and also leadership, that actually is allowing, the space for experimentation and for educators to propel forward the Fourth Industrial Revolution project. What are other mechanisms where, where we are in those very deep rural areas that have not much happening for them, and actually not in communities where even school resources is going to be enabling in terms of providing routers and other things? What other ways could there be? I mean, this is Africa we're talking about. This is a place where we need to come up with other innovations and other solutions and not let issues of lack of resources and so forth hold us back. So we put a Mentimeter exercise as I introduce Lindiwe Matlali into the conversation, our very next speaker, to get the audience view about what else might we do, to be able to, propel the Fourth Industrial Revolution agenda. But as you get into that Mentimeter exercise with the word cloud that will be developed from that, I really want to extend a very warm welcome to Lindiwe Matlali, somebody who I have been admiring for a very long time in various capacities. She is most noted for being the founder and CEO of Africa Teen Geeks, and there is some amazingly wonderful work that is already underway in terms of free online workshops that they are offering our children, and they have done a number of different activities online to be able to allow our kids to actually catch up. But Lindiwe is also the founder of another company called Aphrodite. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Lindiwe. And one of the things that she does is that she stands shoulder to shoulder with our VC, Professor Marwala, as being on the Presidential Fourth Industrial Commission, which is chaired by the President Cyril Ramaphosa. She has numerous accolades, including what we heard a few days ago, is that she's almost a Dr. Lindiwe Matlali in a PhD program with Columbia University. But here locally, she has won the Young Business Award. She was the one of the top 3 finalists, Mail and Guardian Top Young South Africans of 2014. She's the Tech Woman Fellow of 2017, Innovative Magazine Top 50 Visionary Women in Tech. She's really somebody to watch out for, a powerhouse in her own right. And so what she's going to discuss with us today is a little bit different, actually, than what you might have expected. So instead of us asking her to discuss all of the fancy schmancy kinds of things that she is involved with in terms of technology, we're asking Lindiwe for what is the alternative now to those schools that really don't have access and don't have, the technology and the internet and everything else. What would be other ways? And of course, Lindiwe has written numerous articles about this. So we invite you, Lindiwe, to talk us through some of these ideas that you've been sharing so widely and so interestingly. And I'm sure everybody is going to be excited to learn that there are other ways to go about preparing us for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Over to you, Lindiwe.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the great introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very passionate about technology, but I'm also very much aware that as we are in Africa, as much as we think South Africa is better, but we still, a long way to go in terms of where we are. That we still have a lot of people who do not have access to the internet, who do not have access to devices. We've actually been seeing that when we're running our online school during initially when the president announced the first lockdown. As much as we had reached over 500,000 kids, the majority, actually, what was interesting for me was the majority of those children who were from relatively good homes who could access the internet, they still did not have devices. So 70% of them were using their parents' cell phone. And we always talk about how South Africa has almost a 90% penetration rate in cell phones, but what kind of cell phones are those? So it's not like, the majority of our people have access to a Samsung, S20 or an iPhone. So it's the basic smartphone with smaller screen. So a lot of, what we're talking about is not possible for them. And also in rural areas, for example, there's still a lot of issues, not even whether you can afford internet or not, it's because you don't even have the broadband connectivity. For example, where I come from in Belfast, I wanted to connect my family when the first lockdown came, to get my nieces and nephews to study online. There was no broadband line. So I could not even get an ADSL line. I had to use the mobile phone, which is very expensive in terms of data. So, and also you can't just go for any cell phone provider either. So it's not like you can shop to say, maybe this one has a better deal, because where I come from, only one specific cell phone provider works. So those are the challenges that we still face. And as much as I'm pushing to get every child to learn how to code and how important it is, but I also understand that we still have a long way to go. So in 2015, I started working with a couple of amazing women. One of them at the time was actually a professor at MIT. We started looking at how can we create an offline a program where we can teach kids an actual specific language. And that project ended up leading to Need to Code, where which I was able to patent, that we've got a patent for, where we're teaching children knitting, specifically young girls, how to code in Python utilizing knitting. And that was really an interesting program for me, because part of that was, how do we also bridge the gap? A lot of young girls, specifically African girls, are still very much underrepresented in STEM and in tech specifically. So the only way to actually to get them to code is not just, or to be interested in tech, is not just by teaching, but also looking at how can we involve the parents and the grandparents to understand the importance of having tech-savvy young girls, the importance of closing the gender gap in tech. If you think about in tech leadership, for example, only 3% of women in the C-suite are Black. So we still have a long way to go, and it's going to take a long time. And unless you involve the parents and especially the mothers and the grandmothers to help these kids, to understand and get them interested in STEM, because part of when children are interested in girls, for example, when they're interested in mechanical engineering, or they want to work with their dad to fix the car, for example, what my daughter is so into that, the first thing, like, maybe your child is a tomboy, because there's still that a lot of those perception that when a girl child is technical, then they must have a male brain. There must be something wrong with them, because they don't like to play with dolls. They want to play with cars. And those are kind of the stigmas that we also have to remove. But what is interesting about knitting is that the similarities between knitting and knitting pattern and a computer program are stunning. So knitting uses the same type of loops, conditions, and concepts of function as a computer language. Knits and pearls are essentially the zeros and ones of computer programming. And when used in infinite combinations, they can create as much variation as any code. So learning to knit is basically a self-obvious stepping stone to learning to code. A lot of our grandparents and also our mothers in rural areas, they know how to knit. So if you show them how, when they knit a scarf, and teach them how to write a code, and then bring a Python program and put that pattern that they wrote, that as they were doing it, and show them and put it on a Python program, and they see that scarf or whatever they've just knitted, including the colors on the screen, it's very exciting, but also it really inspires them. But it also takes away the myth around around the fact that you have to have a technical background to learn how to code. And also what we've seen is that actually then these parents, they become, and the grandmothers become, the the main encouragers for the girls to start pursuing STEM. And I see it also as a simulator, right? You know, when doctors learn how to surgeons, for example, they don't immediately go in and operate on a body. And also we see that in the aviation space, that when pilots learn how to fly, they also start learning in a simulator. So for me, was how do we then look at creating simulators for these technical programs, so the technical skills that we need the kids to learn, for them to be able then to learn that, so that by the time they get access to a computer, it just becomes an easy way for them to, and also reduce the learning curve that they may learn, but that they may have. But it also reduces this whole stigma that says, you know what, coding, or it's not for women. I always tell people that, every time when you look at the history of computer science, we know the first code was written by a woman, Ada Lovelace. And we've also seen, if you've watched The Hidden Figures, that a lot of these women who are writing the code for the first men to go to space were women. So for us to change those perceptions and get those stigmas, it's really important that we also think about how do we make, because I think many times we keep talking about the fourth industrial revolution is something that is coming. It's already here. We know there's many companies, especially in the US, that have already decided that they are not, they're not going to go, back to the office. Everybody should, work remotely. And we understand that. I think for us as well in South Africa, we know that when you look at our stats for how well our children perform in STEM subjects is still really, really, really bad. We cannot compete with anyone. And now we're living in a global world, especially with the digital skills. We need to also start creating the pathways that our children need. I really truly believe that opportunity dances with those already on the dance floor. So there's so many opportunities that we talk about. To say there's opportunities in STEM, that's what you can do, but it's only if you already have access to the computer, you have got access to the internet, or you are educated, or you are connected, and those only a few people. So that's why when we talk about, there's a lot of people that keep getting the same deals, that's because they are at the right place. So they are already on the dance floor. If you want to grow the dance floor, we need to start thinking differently about how are we going to be equipping our young people, how are we going to be equipping, but also their parents as well, because their parents are so important in getting them. I grew up as an orphan. I didn't have anybody except for my grandfather, but my grandfather loved education so much that every day he used to tell us that, we could get away with anything except not going to school. And he also used to say that if you stay in school, you will never even remember that you were an orphan. And I am who I am because of what he had done for me and inspired me and made sure that I got even as basics as those opportunities were. I didn't even have an option on what subject I was going to choose, because he wanted me to either become a doctor or getting in any STEM, and I ended up doing business. But that's because of what the role that he had played in my life. He used to wake me up at 4 o'clock every morning for me to study, because we lived in a small house. It was always loud. There was 7 of us and 5 of my cousins, because our parents died 2 weeks apart. So my grandfather was looking at after 12 of us. So the only time for you to actually get a quiet time to study was when everybody was sleeping. And that is the reality for a lot of kids who live in squatter camps, where they're so close to each other. The sound, on Fridays it's always loud. There's no way that those kids can have the opportunities that a lot of us who are in this webinar has. So we have to think around, how are we going to make sure that those are there? You equip the teachers, you equip the parents, because the parents then become, the partners even with the teachers, to make sure that we can get the skills that these children have, and create as many simulators that will get these kids to have, the opportunity. We are working with DBE, we're supporting them, we raise money in putting the infrastructure at schools, but only 10% of our schools have the infrastructure that is needed. We have over 24,000 schools in the country. How long is that gonna take before each and every child will have the opportunity they deserve, purely not because right now, only children who are born from a good home. And we talk about how amazing our constitution say it is, talks about every child should have the same opportunities, but unfortunately that is not the case. And so as we think about it and we get excited about making sure that one child can have a tablet, we know that it's a reality that we may not see in our lifetime. And we need to then think around how can we make sure that their child should not be disadvantaged because of who their parents are or because of who they were born, which are things that they did not choose. Thank you, Prof.
Wow, Lindiwe. I mean, really just listening to your conversation and really following the excited chat stream, that's coming online here. Lots of people want to join you and your work on that dance floor. I mean, it's pretty evident from a lot of people. Derek Moore has been quite, prolific in giving a lot of commentary on there. And he says that the idea of using these different computational, these different mechanisms to teach computational thinking is a great idea. And, knitting as one example that you show, Derek is saying that we need more of that kind of thing, to be explored so that we can use appropriate mechanisms, to support those schools towards the kind of thinking. And I think that this is what you bring into the fore, Lindiwe, is the fact that it's not only about all the tools and all the access to resources. Yes, that's lovely to have. We wish it for every child in our community, and we wish it for every home as well. But the idea that we're going to get there, in the near future is something that we should not fool ourselves with. So what you bring into the picture is really an interesting conversation. What would be other ways? So you talk about simulations, you talk about, where would we start, and how do we start with the thinking? I mean, I really like the idea that we begin with families and we include the entire family, grandmothers included, into the conversation around the education of children and what is appropriate. And I think what you're also bringing to the fore, which is really something for us to hold on to, is that there are other ways to do this. There are other mechanisms, other tools that we can start exploring. And I'm really sure that if we go beyond knitting and we look at different indigenous activities that happen, there might be a whole host of things in that arena that could bring our kids and their life world closer to this world of coding, robotics, the fourth industrial revolution, 21st century skills development kind of thinking, that we are all craving at the moment. And so I would like for us to continue the conversation, around this. I don't know, Mitesh, if you want to maybe just put up that Mentimeter just to see if other people had some other ideas, around this. And particularly because, knitting would be one of those things. So again, when we look at our word cloud here, we are looking at a lot of alternative technologies, like the cell phone being something that is available mostly, but I see partnerships being one of the bigger parts of the cloud that is coming up. And I think you're absolutely right. Schools and education cannot be done in ways that that is in isolation. That these partnerships with people like Africa Teen Geeks and other people who are providing, I know Flying Cows of Josie and other people also who provide such partnerships is quite useful. And then somebody's put in here TV programs, which we know is already underway, with providing some support to our matriculants in particular. And then again, recorded lessons for offline access. and app mechanic offline. So that is another, I would imagine, another application. But again, involving a lot of more technology. And I think what Lindiwe is bringing into our consciousness, everybody, is the fact that we need to start with the things that immediately surround us. So yes, we need to look into technology. We need to use whatever technology is available around us. But I think one of the things that she brings into the conversation here is that there are other ways. So knitting might be one of them, but then what could be other possible, everyday activities that we do, or something that's commonplace in our kids' life world that could actually get them into the kind of thinking that supports this 21st century skills development in so many ways. So let us maybe just head into some of the questions that have come up and see what is there, and I'm going to just then direct it to the relevant people. So Katleho, I think this question from Katleho is for Mukateko, where Katleho asked, I am also in education and would like to be a part of robotics and the coding program. How do I go about joining the programs if possible? And Katleho seems to have a background in information technology. So Mukateko, I don't know if you have any answer. I don't know where Katleho is from. I don't know which province, or possibly from Gauteng, I'm not sure. But would there be any information that you might have on how people got involved in the robotics and coding program, from the department side? Kathy? Oh, Katleho says they are based in Johannesburg. Kathy, maybe you want to unmute.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Katleho, for the question. For now, the Department of Basic Education is piloting selected certain number of schools. We are having 1,000 that are piloting grade 7, and then around 200 for grade R to 3. But if there are some companies or organizations that are ready to pilot other schools, they are free to can do so. But for now, we are concentrating on the number of schools that we were selected last year, and we are continuing with them until 2023. Then 2024, it will be for everyone. I'm not sure if
thanks,
I'm
Kathy.
so,
yeah, no, that's fine. So Katleo, it might be that the DBE program rollout will get to you eventually, but maybe Lindiwe, if you want to step in here to talk a little bit through what might be available for teachers. I know you have lots available for learners, but what might be available for teachers, from your space, because I know there's a lot of online spaces, where teachers can equip themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Yeah, we actually are working quite closely with UJ, specifically the School of Mathematics, where we run webinars and workshops to train teachers. The last one we did was open to the public, and we had 989 teachers that attended, and we are planning 2 more workshops. And as Mikateko mentioned, we are also supporting DBE in training teachers. That currently we are looking at about it's going to be 250 schools in 5 provinces that we're going to be supporting with the teacher training, as well as the as equipping the schools with the resources they need. But our workshops that we do are open to the public, and I think maybe depending on where the person is, they can share with us, and we can see what we can do, because we're running a program now that is in partnership with UNICEF, where we are supporting DBE to reach their goal.
Thanks, Lindiwe. And of course, Katleho, at UJ, we also run a Scratch coding club, which has very recently opened up to teachers as well. So if you leave your contact details online, we can make sure that the organizers of the Scratch Coding Club can also get in touch with you. So I think Prudence is typing an answer in there. So Prue, I don't know if you can maybe help Katleho with some access to the UJ space within his work. And then we've got a question for Andres. Andres, Malota is asking, although you mentioned a lot around ICT integration at your school, which they find very motivating, because obviously you are using whatever you have. They are asking about data projectors. Do you have data projectors at your school? Are you acquiring them? How much of this work is actually getting to the classroom aside from the computer labs? Maybe unmute your microphone, Andres.
Am I loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
What we have done, because we just recently received a report from those teachers who went for robotic training at the level of the province. And in their report, it's like we might just implement there and there. They indicated the challenges around implementation, and we are aware that we already on the process of purchasing 5 overhead projectors, 15 laptops, which will be used by those robotic educators who will be implementing as expected. But other laptops will be used by the managers who will be managing accordingly. And other laptops will be used by teachers as they join into these processes of technological implementation, including the Zoom, the Microsoft Teams meetings called by the department, other stakeholders like Sandbox, National Education and Collaboration Trust, and other partners in education. So already we are on the process of making sure that we add these resources as indicated in my presentation.
Thanks, Andres.
I will pause here, ma'am.
No, thanks,
Andres. Yeah, I'm fine with that one. I wanted to add that it's a way of reinforcing in terms of, we got only one computer lab, and we are aware that robotics is implemented from grade 8 to grade 7. So for us to also make space for other learners, while other learners will be in the computer lab, other learners will be in other classes using the overhead projectors and the laptops. Like we also in as a start, we also plan to add at least 20 iPads for learners, so that those teachers who are already implementing robotics must not wait for a long time for others who are in the computer lab. We are planning to use other classes. That's why we are adding the overhead projectors, the laptops, and the iPads. Laptops for teachers, iPads for learners.
Thanks, Andres. And I think that what Andres is pointing out to is a slow growth in access. In other words, they just used what they had, and year on year, they are increasing that. And I think as people are getting more and more excited about technology, that is being used more and more, in the classroom. And I love what he said, when teachers started to learn from one another beyond the workshops and beyond what the DBE provides and so forth, it also means there's an empowerment in that space where teachers are not afraid to fail forward. They're not afraid to actually take some of the risks that go with teaching things in new ways. And of course, I think that everybody is going to eventually get to a point where you're going to start learning also from the kids, and I'm sure it's happening already. So for us to sort of stop the process and to keep on feeling like this can't happen now is really not an answer. And so, we need to just start from where we are and then slowly and sequentially progress from there. And of course, as people get excited, new resources and new ideas is going to come to the fore. So thanks for that, Andres. Sarai has also volunteered, Katleho and others who are interested, that they are part of an organization called Techno Africa Academy, based in Mpumalanga. They would also like to volunteer at schools to roll out robotics and so forth. So if there are any principals in the house from Mpumalanga, or anybody involved with education from Mpumalanga, please contact Sarai. If you are interested in taking the coding robotics agenda forward in your school. Derek again talks about the desire to move in the digital direction is a concern because there's an increased danger of the privatization of public education. Again, I don't want to go into any political debates, but certainly the UCT announcement of a online school, for example, brought with it quite a bit of this conversation, Derek, in terms of who can afford this. And so at the end, the question always arises: how do we address the capacity and infrastructure for those who are on the margins? Lindiwe, I don't know if you're in a position to talk a little bit about this, because you are in that field of entrepreneurship and ways in which you are trying to work to capacitate and provide infrastructure to schools and to spaces that don't have. I don't know if you want to respond maybe to Derek's question here. How do we address capacity and infrastructure for those who are on the margins?
That's a very difficult one. It's really a difficult one, because I think, I remember the first time when we started, because we started working with DBE from when the curriculum was developed. So we were the one who raised the funding for the coding and robotics curriculum to be developed. And the initial budget, when we were trying to see, if you can equip all the schools, it was like something like 35 billion rands. And not even buying computers, but looking at Raspberry Pis and the cheapest way to get it done. And then the connectivity, it's really a different one. And I don't think it's something that, can be solvable immediately unless there's more organizations like ourselves, the Kagiso Trust, that collaborate with DBE in supporting them from the infrastructure and the teacher development. And I think even getting institutions like UCT coming in and providing education, I actually see it as a great step forward. And I think, because if you think about their model, they're relatively still the cheapest, well, still more expensive if you think about that. The majority of people who should be getting that good education can't. But I think a lot of non-profit like ourselves, I mean, we worked on, when we started actually the first online school, when we did during that program where we had 110 teachers that were part of our program teaching. So it can be done, but then you need to have those resources if you want to make sure that you can reach everyone. And online education, unfortunately, as we've already discussed, that it's not something that is accessible for every child in South Africa. So good quality education, as we speak right now, is not accessible to everyone because it's still very costly. And until we find ways of supporting the government to improve the system that it currently has, we are never actually going to get there. So that's why my approach is partner with the department, partner with government, and try to make a difference, wherever you can. If you end up helping, 5 schools, you've helped over 5,000 children. If it's 10 schools, so it's those 5,000 lives that have changed that can actually go back and make a difference in their communities.
Thanks so much, Lindiwe. Lindiwe, please pay attention to the chat. There's lots of people who want to collaborate with you in various forms, and it's lovely. And I will ask the organizers to also capture some of this chat to send through to you as a transcript, because I think there's a lot here with partnerships. And I think from our word cloud, we saw the idea of partnerships. And so this is kind of like a living example of how partnerships start to seed and start to happen. So I see Kiana is talking from a macrocom perspective, there are CSIR perspectives and all kinds of things on here that might allow a much broader spread of the work that you already do, Lindiwe. So if you could just pay attention to the chat, and that would give you some indication as to exactly, where people find themselves. I think we are going to perhaps start to move the conversation forward towards, thinking about what were the learnings, what were the main ideas that sort of emerged from our conversation today. And I think on a large front, one of the sort of key ideas that have come forward, for me from Andres's conversation was really centered around start from wherever you are. And I think that message needs to reach ears and leadership far and wide, and oftentimes our young teachers have got so much to offer our schools. If only we tap into those resources and enable them with the spaces where they can support and help our other colleagues who may be, born in an era where technology was not the thing. And so I think from Andres's conversation, I really take away, a lot related to, if you have 2 laptops that's available at school, or 2 computers, or a couple of cell phones, just begin, get people curious, get people interested. And as teachers become excited about the use of technology and the ways in which technology can be used, it is obviously going to influence many other people, many other stakeholders. And I like the idea that Andres has not left out the most important stakeholder, who are the parents, and particularly in our low quintile schools. I think oftentimes there is an undermining of resources in our parent community. And I think he mentioned in his presentation that resources are available in the community. So for example, they use a parent who has volunteered to come into school. They've got expertise in technology. They've got the time to actually do this. And so they come into school. The school has facilitated an additional space in the timetable for this parent to become involved with learners and to provide some of the basic skills, that is actually required. So from Andres's really strong motivation as a leader is start wherever you are, get people excited, enable young people to actually come into the space and come into their own, to do the things that they naturally are adept at doing, and so, with that, a school then grows. And I like the idea also of reallocating your resources. Of course, there are some basic, resources that need to be allocated to things that the school can absolutely not, do without. You need, to be able to keep track of those things. But certainly, whatever resources you can channel into supporting the development towards a 4IR world. And this could even mean buying in or bringing in people, so it doesn't always have to be related to, something material, so I think at the end of the day, Andres is pushing that agenda that school leadership has a big role to play, particularly if you bring together your stakeholders. And then, of course, Kati Mokoteko has really sensitized us to the idea that the DBE is serious about propelling schools into the 4th industrial revolution by way of introducing coding and robotics. Again, it's happening in a kind of a piloting sort of stage. There was a question, Kati, around how pilot schools are chosen, and I don't know what the criteria for that is, and across how many provinces this is actually happening. But the likelihood that in 2024 we're actually going to have, the vast majority of teachers prepared for taking on the agenda of coding and robotics at school is again another healthy development, that you have brought into the conversation. And of course, I suspect that those pilot schools are also acting as agents of change in the communities in which they find themselves, where they are then supporting and equipping their sister schools around them, because those circuits kind of work closely together, and then they become the ICT champions, the coding robotic champions, going forward. I really liked some of the, pictures that you showed in particular, which shows some of the rollout into the classroom. And of course, one of the key messages that you are bringing into the conversation is not only that coding and robotics is happening in terms of teacher training and in terms of what needs to happen in the classrooms, but that your work also involves supporting teachers post those workshops. And so you are going into schools, troubleshooting with them, experimenting with them, because contextually things are a little bit different. And then, of course, your revelation that the lifelong learning doesn't necessarily just stop there, and that, we have the kind of learning that will continue, because, of course, as you know, technology and so forth, just the digital space itself grows by the second, and new things come to the fore, and we're learning all the time. I'm also quite amazed and impressed at the number of free online spaces that are now becoming available for people to voluntarily by themselves, equip themselves. I think we had a conversation with Matthew Haynes not so long ago, and Andres was a part of that conversation, where he was, saying that, give your teachers room to choose their own professional development in terms of where they need to equip themselves, create these professional learning communities that can, extend from the school out into the social media platforms where a lot of this conversation is happening, where they can meet other teachers. And of course, Kathy, your work involves people meeting each other because teachers from different schools are connected to one another, in your space. So exciting times for us indeed. And then, of course, Lindiwe brought to us the dance floor. And I think, Lindiwe, that metaphor will remain with all of us post this conversation, that, you have to be on the dance floor in order to be able to be a part of the technology drive. And of course, your very important sharing for the places that are, throwing their hands up in the air and say, well, we don't have computers, we don't have internet connectivity, everything is not happening for us. And you're saying this is not an impossible space to also be in and to work, with ways into the future. And your example of using knitting, I really liked somebody's conversation here around knitting. I'm just trying to get to that conversation. So Sarai speaks of, being on the dance floor, and let us light up the dance floor and bring others into 4IR with us, with STEM being the driver. And then I was looking for the one that somebody wrote in relation to how families, can get involved. So I think, I can't seem to find that chat now, where somebody said that the one wonderful thing about knitting is that in the evenings, families can come together, sit together, like one would imagine how storytelling is done around a fire, where they get excited about technology and not fear technology per se. So there's lots on the chat at the moment that is centered around your conversation, Lindy. But I think you've given us something really important to think about. What could be the everyday activities that we have amongst us and in our kids' life world that we can use in order to allow them into the thinking that is required, for the fourth industrial revolution. So, I really want to say that I support Mandisa, who welcomed us into this conversation. I support her commentary completely with saying, guys, let us not leave this conversation here, in the webinar. Let us move this conversation, outside of here, wherever you find yourself, and begin smaller circles of conversation around this. And of course, Lindiwe, Africa Teen Geeks, Kati Sitole, myself, and lots of people online here are very active on the Twitter space. At the moment, there's a lot going on in the hashtag education conversations. And so if you really want to continue the participation, that is the space in which the current crowd can continue in, and where you can extend the reach, into a much wider space. So I think that today was the beginning, really, of showing quite clearly that as a South African community, we are not in, we are not behind in the sense of, not having the conversation. As Lindiwe pointed out, is that the fourth industrial revolution is not coming, it's already here. And I think COVID-19 and the other, various different disruptions that we've been experiencing, I mean, the world over right now, we have so much that is happening that is pushing us into thought processes of what kind of education do we need for a fourth industrial revolution world. And so I think that this conversation is something that is just only, scratching the tip of the iceberg. It really is one that needs to continue beyond. And I think that the idea that we start to think about innovations in Africa, the kind of conversation we kicked off last time around African solutions for African problems. And so what would be the ways we could actually engage in that? And so, this conversation should continue beyond this forum and continue in ways where beyond knitting, maybe there are other things that we can share with one another that gets our teachers, our kids into a world that they are going to have to embrace, as it unlocks itself and propels us into the future. So with that, I would like to then ask that Dr. Clive Smith, who is a colleague of mine at the University of Johannesburg, now retired and residing in the beautiful city of Cape Town, who will do the vote of thanks for us. Clive, a very warm welcome, and I hope that today's conversation was exciting and that it propelled you into some ways of thinking, around the kind of leadership specifically that South Africa needs, education leadership that South Africa needs to take us into the future. So with that, Clive, I don't know if you want to just maybe switch your camera on, come on board and say hello to everybody and maybe do a closure and a vote of thanks for us, please.
Thank you, Kat. You're very busy retiring. If I may make one or two comments looking at what we've heard today through the lens through which I look at much of the world, which is an organization lens. The one thing that struck me is that very often, especially in a crisis, people will respond in different ways. Some will respond with an air of resignation, shrugging their shoulders, thinking, well, what can I do? A sense of dependency, someone else needs to do something. Others become despondent. But there are others, as Kati said, who take advantage of a forced opportunity. And research in organization change suggests that the most powerful trigger for change is pain, not knowledge, important though knowledge is, but pain. And that's really what we're going through. We're going through pain, but at the same time, it is a forced opportunity. And we've seen from our speakers today how they have taken advantage of this opportunity. In particular, I've got one or two thoughts concerning the leadership that we've seen today. If I can take a quote from Andries, he made use of teachers who are digitally ahead. And that's one of the things that a crisis does. A crisis opens up spaces for hidden talents and hidden expertise to be revealed. And it's important for leaders, and we've seen that from Andries today, it's important for leaders to create space for this leadership that perhaps has been hidden for so long to come out into the open and to be revealed. And then a second thought I had, and this is picking up from something that Kati said, that we're building the road while we're walking on it, while we're traveling it, is that leaders need to be nimble, or agile is one of the terms used in the literature today. So in a time of crisis and a time of opportunity, we need leaders who are able to let go and to release and allow and experiment. It needs a lot of thinking on one's feet. You're probably familiar with the saying that some people watch things happen, some people wonder what happened, and others make things happen. And today we've heard stories of social entrepreneurial leaders, people who are making things happen. So with that, let me give thanks to folk who've contributed today. Firstly, Mandisa, thank you for your words of welcome, and for the Kagiso Trust for their hosting of us today. And also to Lorna in the background, who's helped a lot with the logistics. The Bridge organization, always supportive. And then our speakers, Andries, Kati, and Lindiwe. Thank you for sharing, Lindiwe, as you said, your passion with us today. That we need leaders with enthusiasm, with passion. And then thank you to all the participants. Not just an audience, but judging by all the chats today, we've had a great deal of participation, which a contact session wouldn't allow. And a lot of networking is taking place today. And it's really an example of some systemic thinking taking place by having so many people be able to contribute to the conversation. And as has been said, I do encourage these contacts that have been made today to be built upon and to continue and that the word be spread. And then finally, I'd like to thank Kat as Program Director, the networker par excellence. Kat has an amazing capacity and skill to network. So Kat, thank you to you. And once again, to everyone who's contributed today, thank you. And if you are traveling anywhere, those who still need to travel, travel safely and keep safe. All the best. Thank you.